Welcome to Real Estate Investing Unscripted, a podcast from Fund That Flip, where we explore some of the most creative, innovative, and inspiring stories from the real estate investor community. With expert tips and success stories you won't hear anywhere else, you'll come away with inspiration on how to improvise in the unscripted world that is real estate investing so that you can dominate your next real estate deal. Now your host, founder and CEO of Fund That Flip, Matt Rodak.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Real Estate Investing Unscripted. I'm your host, Matt Rodak, founder and CEO of Fund That Flip. And I am super excited about our guest today. Joining me from my home state of Ohio is Agostino Pintus of Realty Dynamics and also the host of Bulletproof Cashflow podcast. Welcome to the show, Agostino.
Hey, man, I'm psyched up to be here, man. It's awesome.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, really appreciate you being here. So, I think you've got a pretty interesting story, and I'd love to start with that. Maybe your background. I was checking out on LinkedIn, and we got to chat a little bit about this a couple of weeks back at our open house. Background in technology, kind of information technology. You had a number of senior roles, it looks like, for some rather large, innovative organizations. Talk to us how you got kind of into the real estate investing world, and how you were able to leverage kind of your past into what you do today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a couple of years ago, before I fell into this whole multifamily focus that we've established now, about 16 years before that, I was a C-level executive at a company, CIO, where I ran a large enterprise IT. The company just went public, and us executives were flush with cash, and it was recommended by some of the other executives are saying, you should start buying some of these houses, small multifamily and things like that. So that's exactly what I started doing. Young guy, just started buying up as many houses as I possibly could that made sense. And I was at the time doing turnkey type of houses, buy them, put a tenant in there. That's it. I every once in a while, I'll pick up one of those flip deals, but I really tried to focus on my career and just buy the homes. Right. And, I'd been doing that for, as I said, about 16 years, just rolling through, going from company to company, working at different places. And throughout all this time period, before going into multifamily, I'd go work for some companies, some better than others. And, every once in a while, you end up not working there anymore. But I noticed that throughout this whole period, that real estate portfolio, that little real estate portfolio that I built out a long time ago in the early 2000s was still producing income. A little bit of income would just trickle in, right?
Yep.
While working as a CIO, it's those sorts of stints are even though they're really great while they run, a CIO lasts maybe 4 years tops before they go back to go work for another company. And I really didn't want to do that anymore. The only difference between me and the waiter down at the restaurant is that my bills are bigger than him. You're always living in fear when you're working for someone, So I took it upon myself to really focus on multifamily. I had an attorney friend explain syndication to me, and 2 years ago, as I said, just over 2 years ago, I studied everything I can get my hands on. I committed 100% to just doing this type of asset class. And from as soon as I did that, burned the ships, sold everything I had, and went straight into multifamily. That's exactly how I did it.
So that's always an interesting kind of, so maybe back us up. So you had this portfolio of homes, however many, you sold them all 2 years ago. Were you still working for someone at that point, or had you kind of, quote unquote, retired from your most recent gig? Or
it's funny because when I had worked at a company in Indianapolis, and I left New York City. I used to live in New York City, in Queens, and left New York to go to Indianapolis. And working for that company, earning very good money, working for some great people. Well, when that boss, that CEO, left, I don't know if many of your listeners would know, but at the C level, as soon as the CEO leaves, typically the people right below them that hired them on, they usually end up leaving as well. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened to me. And I'm thinking to myself, how many more times do I need to go through this? Yep. How many more times do I let someone else control my life? And I decided, right, it took a second to really figure this part out. I took some time off and really focus on what I want to do next. And I realized that, just like I said, this real estate portfolio was throwing off money regardless of what was going on in my life. And that's when I figured I'm just going to focus on this. And that's exactly what I did. It's been sitting under my nose for 16 years and it took that long to figure it out. Right. So yeah.
So sold the houses and you're primarily focused on apartment syndication. So just talk us through a little bit for folks that may not be as familiar with what that is. What is apartment syndication? Kind of, what do you do? What do you look for? What's kind of your role in the transaction? All that good stuff.
Absolutely. So what my general partners and I do is we go off and we try to find value add properties, right? Properties that are in good locations that maybe need some TLC. Then we take them, we bring them back up to par, we increase the rents, and we of course, drive revenue that way. And of course, we don't take the properties down ourselves. We don't buy them with our own money. We have investor partners that come along with us. They invest with us in those deals for a good, healthy return, as well as all the tax benefits that come along with it. Right. So we typically, and of course, they have ownership, they have equity in the deal, and they also get that preferred return that comes along with it. So as the great thing about a limited partner is that the general partners, myself and my partners in the deal, we're operating the deal. We take on the risk of the loan, so to speak. We are making sure that things are getting done. We're executing the business plan, and the limited partners get all the benefits of that property as far as the returns are concerned, with none of the downside. So from a syndication perspective in this asset class, it's a remarkable thing for an investor partner to really enjoy.
Sure. So why'd you choose to go down the syndication route? I mean, it sounds like you already had a portfolio of, smaller, single family, 2 to 3 to maybe 4 family properties. What caused you to kind of, as you said, burn the ships on that strategy and start with a larger syndication strategy?
Yeah, I noticed that the multifamily deals, the small multifamily deals that I had, they were a little bit easier to manage for the property management at the time. And I had properties at that time, they were in Virginia and in Michigan. And but property management as a whole, to try to manage all these properties all over the place, was somewhat of a pain and very expensive. A lot of overhead that went along with it. And, so once this attorney friend explained some of the benefits with syndication, as far as, the obvious, you have, instead of one house or even 100 houses sitting across the city, you have 100 units sitting in one place with one roof. That's great. But aside from that, all the tax benefits that come along with it, it made total sense that that's what I need to be doing. And of course, there's banks that want to lend on those sorts of assets. You can't, trying to get a bank to lend you money on a house is somewhat difficult to do. So at the same type of rate, at a 3 or 4 or even a 5% interest rate, it's tough to do. So it made total sense to me. It made 100% total sense to me.
So a bit of an economies of scale game, if you will.
Precisely. And what's funny is that many of the people that your listeners may be aware of, as far as popular guys in syndication, I'd never heard of them. It just the model just made sense. It made perfect sense to me. And I think it was the discipline, though, in actually studying it on my own, knowing zero about that business, but having familiarity with the construction side, and of course tenant management, which is a big deal, and how to put deals together, and of course from corporate America as well. All those different things really culminated into building a whole syndication business around it. But I think that the amount of training it took to get over to where we are now. We're closing on 500 units and getting ready to lock up another 150. It's, it takes a great deal of discipline to be able to learn all this stuff that needs to be done, not only from putting a deal together, but also the investor side of things, investor management, vendor management. How do you partner up with your property managers? How do you pick out a good one or a bad one? Things like that. You learned, or at least me anyway, I learned all that in corporate America. So that's one thing I still I'm really happy about.
Yep. Yep. So this is going to be a loaded question, so maybe I'll have to try to break it down in pieces. But I think one of the things that's really hard for a lot of folks, right, that are trying to get into the real estate game is, and we even deal with this like in our organization. I think every organization, it's to some extent it's called the innovator's dilemma, right, where you've got this thing that's working, and it's paying the bills, if you will, right. If you're a business, that means you got this product that's working. But you need to innovate to stay ahead, but innovating may also cost you or break what's currently working in your business, right? And the way I think about this for real estate businesses or people that want to get into real estate is like, I've got this 9 to 5, right? It's paying my bills. In your case, it sounds like, you had good income potential there. It sounds like you had just reached kind of a breaking point around like, I'm tired of people controlling my destiny. But what advice would you have, or kind of what was your thought process in going from steady state, even if it wasn't entirely steady state, but at least, you at least know you could probably go and find another CIO or CTO type job, have it for 3 or 4 years. That's still more than, it's less risky than, right, selling all your income producing assets and saying, I'm going to go do this thing I've never done before. Like, how did you think through that? And how did you get comfortable with that?
Matt, it's the way you get comfortable with something is to get educated on it first. The reason why people don't take action is because they don't have the knowledge, and they don't have the knowledge not because they're stupid or anything. It's because they've not sat down and studied the hell out of whatever the craft that they need to become masters at. And that's the key. I'd say about 5 years ago, or maybe actually 7 years ago, more like 7, I took up boxing and MMA. And there's one thing, even later in life that taught me is to apply great discipline in what you're doing, how to strike, how to block, all those different things. You have to have discipline. If you screw it up, you're going to get punched in the face. You're going to bust out your teeth. And that's what happened to me several times, right? So you got to get really good at that. And, if that's one thing I learned later on in life is that. And, just like you said, I did not want my future be dictated by someone else, even though, yes, I was earning very good money. But it was more along the lines of, I wanted to live to my full potential. I want to show that I can achieve my full potential. Doing a 9 to 5 is not my full potential, not even close, right? It's just not that. And for some people, they're okay with it, and that's all right. I don't knock them, but once you're out of the matrix and you see what you're capable of doing, right, with enough of the training, even in the Matrix, they do the same thing. For those people that don't know, it's a movie from 1999. Great movie. Yeah, it's a great movie. But they download the knowledge, they have the knowledge, and now they can do Kung Fu. Yep. Same thing. Except you can't just download the knowledge. You really have to sit down and really apply yourself to learning and absorbing. But I think in my case, though, once I made that decision, I wasn't even entirely clear that was what I was going to do after that last gig. I was figuring it might be real estate. But what it was is just once I made that decision, I burned the ships, sold everything, studied the hell out of multifamily, networked with the best people I could find. I built the team. I put that all together before I actually bought my first deal. I became a multifamily syndicator before I was a multifamily syndicator.
All right. So that's a great point, right? Because I think there's two sides of this. I think there's some folks that, are unwilling or unable for whatever reason to do the work and build the confidence in their knowledge to kind of take the step. And I think there's also a lot of folks that, call it analysis paralysis, where they've been studying for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, right? But they've never taken action. Like, right. What was that first action that you took? It sounds like you built a team. Like, when did you know, like, all right, we're ready, we're going to do this? And then, like, what was the first thing that you did, or what would be if you could do it again, what would be the first thing that you would do to kind of like move yourself into, the books, into the real world? Sure.
The first thing I did, so once I sold everything, and I had a little bit of cash on me, I decided, I'm going to buy a multifamily building on my own. If I'm going to go off and raise money eventually, I need to show investors that I'm serious about what I'm doing, right? Yep. I need to say that I at least own a multifamily, like a bigger multifamily. So with what little cash I had, I leveraged it to buy a 12-unit apartment building on my own, right? Did it, underwrote it. I still own that deal. It's freaking awesome. Love that deal. Throws off cash every month. Beautiful. Love it. But at least now I have a story to tell to investors, right? And who's these friends that started off as investor partners and general partners. They're still my friends today, and we invest in deals too. But I can tell them, it's like, yeah, I actually risked something. I risked my own money, so to speak, even though real estate's not a risk, but that's besides the point. To really demonstrate that I'm serious about what I'm doing, that's essentially what I did. You just got to take action and do it. And that's people get comfortable. So I think what's the problem is people think that just by reading a book, they're doing enough to make a difference, and reading a book won't do anything.
Yep. So in your case, you had the wherewithal and the means to actually move in action on a property. But I think, for those that may not have that capability, I think the important thing is use what you do have, right? And I think the thing that everyone has is time. And I remember the way that I got started in this business was I volunteered my time for free to drive around and find deals for other people who are flipping houses, to swing hammers and do demo work, right? And just like learn, right? And that builds confidence too, because you start to see the people that are actually doing it, and you start to see like, oh, I could do this, right? Like, oh, this isn't nearly that hard or that risky or whatever your fears may be. Getting out and doing something against a plan, I think is important.
Well, that's exactly it. There are still plenty of resources and plenty of ways of adding value, even if you don't have any money. And even so I'll get some people that come to our events. We do them every couple of weeks here in Cleveland. And anybody, if somebody came up to me and they said, I have a deal, I already underwrote it. Here's how it's going to perform. Here's the cash on cash. Here's the IRR. Here's the equity split. Here's all these things, but I don't have any money. But what I am good at, I am a good general contractor. I can do plumbing. I can do flooring. I can do asphalt. I can do all these different things. This is what I bring to the table. I'll be, all right, let's roll, man. You're a GP. Let's roll. Let's go. Let's do it. Yep. But most times, people just don't want to do the work. They don't want to do the underwriting. They just throw a deal at me and they just say, "Here's the deal." I'm like, "Well, thanks, guys. I can't do anything with this." It's like and you know what? I really want to help people get into this business. I honestly do. Yep. But they really have to do some of the homework to try to understand it. And it's not. I'm not going to say it's not hard. It is. It's just not easy. Otherwise, everybody would be doing it. Everybody would be very successful at it. But there are resources out there that even for very little money, you can pick up, absorb, and apply it. There's plenty of resources like that out there.
Yeah. So like to summarize, maybe I think what we're both talking about a little bit is, right, like, one, get smart on whatever you're trying to do, whether it's apartment syndication, flipping houses, single family rental properties, note buying, whatever it is, like, get smart on it. And I think the second piece of it, right, is what we're talking about is like, do an inventory of your assets, right? And by assets, I mean, maybe that's cash, like what you had, maybe that's skills, maybe that's time, maybe that's unique perspective on a market where you can get properties purchased that no one else can because everybody in the neighborhood, whatever that is, right? Do an inventory of your assets and figure out where you can bring value, and then find partners that have the things that you don't have.
Yeah.
Put deals together, right? Like,
that's right.
Yeah. It's hustle.
But you know what though, Matt, you did touch on something though too. Your first point is that you have what is your exact precise thing that you're doing. All we do is multifamily. I don't do wholesaling. I don't do industrial. I don't do commercial. I do is multifamily. I do one thing. We have a social media. We have a media business as well, but that media business goes hand in glove with the multifamily business. They rely on each other. Yep. And we have some scale where we can actually do that. But many of the folks that come out, at least to our events anyway, they're trying to do everything under the sun. I'm like, guys, you got to stop everything and do one thing and become a master at it. That's the secret. That's it.
Pick a lane and stay in it.
Yeah. Pick a lane, stay in it, become a master at it. Once you're great at it, great. Then now you can go pick up something else. Keep the first dish spinning and then pick up a second one and make sure that first one doesn't slow down.
Totally agree.
Yeah, 100%.
Totally agree. That has been a key to like us being able to grow the business. Like our name says it, right? Like we're focused on the fix and flip space.
Yep.
And once we got that going, we started doing other things around new construction and, rental loans and different things like that. But like it started by being really good at one thing, right? Hugely important point. All right, cool. So you mentioned that you like to help people get into the business. Sounds like you're running some events. You also have a podcast. Talk to us a little bit about the podcast. What is it? And kind of what purpose does it serve for you in your business?
Sure. The Bulletproof Cashflow podcast is really designed for a multitude of different things. First is we want to educate people about multifamily real estate. It really helps in people that aren't familiar with what we do with me and my team, and maybe some of the things that we've encountered as we go through this business. But we also discuss things outside of multifamily, but real estate related. Even today, for instance, we did an interview with a person that does mobile home parks, right? Mm-hmm. Not directly related to multifamily, but it's a very interesting business. It's also, he syndicates all of his deals, very different syndication model. But I think that for many of our listeners, they might find that interesting, that different ways of generating cash flow down the road. And the reason why I'll include those sorts of people is because for the time being, our business is very, very hot. The multifamily business is hot, especially here in Cleveland. It's getting even hotter. Eventually, we may have to pivot. It's going to happen. We won't be able to have to change cities or go to a different place or start looking at even smaller deals. But for the time being, you know what? If you're a well-rounded individual that is aware of other asset classes, it's super. Yep. Like that's why I put those out there every once in a while. It's really to educate investors, educate people in general, and really help build credibility for what we're doing as well. I think the podcast has been really successful for us in terms of really helping other people get to know who we are, and we get to know who they are because they come out to our events, and I really love hearing that. Hey, I listened to that podcast. I learned so much from it. It's awesome. Thank you so much. And I just think it's awesome when I hear that. I just think it's phenomenal.
Very cool. And I think the important point, I think, is real estate investing is a personal business, right?
Yes.
It's you're talking about a real tangible asset where people live in one regard. And you're also talking about, in your case, taking other folks' hard-earned capital and trying to earn a return for them. So podcast, awesome way to open the door and the window into how you think and who you are and different things like that. So that's cool. So check it out. Bulletproof Cashflow. I'm assuming it's on all the typical podcasts.
Oh yeah. It's on, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, we're everywhere.
Yeah. Can't miss it. Search it, Bulletproof Cashflow. You guys can find it. All right. So I'm going to bring us home on kind of the theme of the show here being real estate investing unscripted. As you know, things happen. Sounds like you've done enough deals now where, some things have gone, not according to plan, right? Despite your best efforts on a due diligence, on, dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, like it just happens, right? It happens to all of us, no matter how good we plan. Share with us one of those stories, or maybe two of those stories, what you learned from it, or just generally, things that, others can kind of keep an eye out for to avoid, maybe similar gotcha type moments.
Sure. My partners and I recently closed on a deal. It's a 126 unit deal. It's a $5 million deal, and loved it. Loved the deal. Still love it today. It's doing phenomenal, right? But it was again another value add type of property. And when we locked it up under the LOI, we closed it just fine. One thing that we did not put in the PSA that we always put in, and we just forgot, was the clause. The clause that says that all the units will be rent ready, right? Forgot to do that. So post closing, we're walking through the deal, and we open up a unit, there's no ceiling, Matt. The ceiling is gone. I see nothing. I see steel rafters, and there's no floor. The floor is gone too.
Industrial look, man. The new industrial.
That's right. And they said that all the units were rent ready, and obviously it wasn't. But we had no recourse because it wasn't in the contract anyway. So for whatever reason, it got left out. It got dropped. I'm not sure what happened. But now we actually make sure that it's in all the contracts. So basically, the clause that says that if all the units are not rent ready, there's some sort of fine. Typically $2,000 or $4,000 depending on your area of where you're listening to this. But you kind of have to weigh that with the how much it's worth to you. So if we're only talking about a couple of units. When you're talking about a $5 million deal, $4,000 does not really matter all that much. Mm-hmm. Because if I were to go back and make a big fuss about it, the brokers they talk, man. The brokers talk, and if they talk and they say, hey, this guy Agostino, he'll start complaining about this, and do you really want to deal with that? And
he's hard to work with, yeah,
he's hard to work with. He's difficult. He's a difficult guy. You don't want to deal with that. Yep. So, but if I would have put that just up front. And you do your pre-closing checklist, you see it, you mark it down, you say, hey guys, look, you're sitting at the closing table. Hey guys, look, I saw this. It's supposed to be rent ready. Clearly it's not. You better send some cash back. And they would have done it, would have been an issue, right? Yep. So there's that. That's probably, a good learning lesson for many of your listeners out there is that always make sure you have that clause, and since then, it's saved us many times on much bigger deals. So very pleased that I'm not going to forget that one ever again.
It's not always that the seller's trying to get one over on you. It's like, they may be checked out. They may have inherited the property. They don't actually know what's going on. Right. Like it's just,
that's exactly it. Right after a deal gets under PSA, and the purchase service or a purchase sale agreement, typically, yes, the seller will stop doing anything. They immediately start cutting costs everywhere they could to try to maximize their own capital. And I mean, it makes sense. I get it. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but this is just what happens typically. Yep. And and that's what happened in this case. I'm not mad at it. It's just that's the nature of the beast. You have to understand this was going to happen. Yep. We never do that, but just is how it is. And the asset's still totally worth it. We're still very pleased with it, and it's still performing. So, hey, I'm fine with it.
You're building some of that stuff into your model because it's just going to happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to happen. That as soon as you take it over, the occupancy that you bought it at, you bought it at 91% occupancy. Right now, when you lock it up under PSA, when you take it over, it'll probably be sitting at 80 because they stopped advertising and they don't want to spend any money on getting new tenants. Or even worse, the tenants they do bring in, they perform no background checks. The next thing you know, you have a bunch of people that a bunch of undesirables that have evictions or criminal background or whatever that you have to clean up. Yep. That kind of stuff happens too. Again, you got to put all that stuff in your contract to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yep. Another thing I think is worth kind of pointing out there that is worth learning here, and this is, I think, a common theme that I've noticed with successful people on the show is, not making decisions that are just purely on dollars, right? So yes, you could have gone after that person for $2,000 or $4,000 or whatever, right? But like, what is that worth both in terms of your time as well as your reputation in the market?
Yep.
And that's something I consistently see from successful folks like yourself is this bigger picture, longer term view on the business as opposed to, trying to squeeze and wring every last cent out of every deal. Stepping over dollars to pick up pennies is what we like to say here. Right. And like,
exactly.
That's something I think, Well, it doesn't feel good. You got to set your ego aside, and sometimes you get beat. But like in the grand scheme of things, like not losing focus on the bigger picture, I think is also important.
Yes. Well, and you just touched on it. Reputation is everything in this business. If you have the reputation of being difficult to work with, no one will work with you. And my reputation is that I will close stuff. I close. That's what I do. And I think most brokers that know me, and most of them in the city do. They know that when they talk to me and I slam down an LOI, I intend on closing that deal. Yep. That's the only time I put down an LOI. I put down an LOI when I intend on closing. And I don't just throw out LOIs just for the sake of doing it.
Yep.
So, and that's that speaks volumes. That speaks volumes. That's important.
Totally. You can get better deals because people put a value on certainty of closing. So
precisely. And you're not difficult, and you're easy to work with. You're easy to work with. Yep.
People pay a premium for that. Cool.
That's right.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. Hopefully some save someone out there from experiencing something similar. So we'll get you out of here on this. So if any of the listeners want to get a hold of you, we talked a little bit about the podcast, so check that out. Bulletproof Cashflow. What other ways can people find you, and what type of person would it make sense to reach out to you? And again, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, bulletproofcashflow.com. Just reach out to us there. We have plenty of other motivational things out there too. We have a blog out there that helps explain how the business works. It's a lot of training material out there too that we put out to really help even new people understand how syndication works. So, and we also put up videos on YouTube as well. We have the podcast on iTunes, on Stitcher, on all the popular platforms. So yeah, we're just about everywhere, man. We're just about everywhere.
So bulletproofcashflow.com, check it out. If you got deals in the Ohio market that you maybe want Agostino to take a look at, or if you're interested in syndicating deals with him, that's where to find him. Really appreciate you being here with us today, Agostino. I think maybe just kind of some things to summarize that I've learned, right? Like pick a lane, get smart on that lane, and then take action against that lane, whatever that may be, syndication, flipping, note buying, whatever, right? Figure out a way. And I think the other big takeaway here is like reputation is worth a lot. Again, I think that's something that's very consistent across the folks that I've gotten to know that are successful is, building a brand, and whether it's actually doing podcasts or even just in your local market with how you operate, interact with the overall ecosystem. Huge investment to be made, but also, pays off in the long run.
Yep.
Any parting thoughts from you? Anything I missed?
You know what? It's, I'd say that one of the biggest things that people need to do is make their minds up and take massive action. Stop, put the books down, guys. Just do it.
Get involved. Roll up
get to work.
Somehow find a way to get to
work.
$1 trillion industry. There's enough pie out there for all of us. Get busy.
Yeah, exactly. Come on, go out to an event. Go talk to people.
Yeah.
Go talk to people. There's no money. There's no money in your living room. I promise. There's no money watching Games of Thrones. I promise. Get out of the house.
so with that, we'll end the podcast so you guys can go out and take action. So thank you again, Agostino. This was great. Thank you all for listening to the episode of Real Estate Investing Unscripted. For more great resources or to get funding for your next project, head on over to fundthatflip.com. Otherwise, look forward to next time. Your host, Matt Rodak, signing off.